I was diagnosed with MS. I was on a DMT. My doctor, my neurologist thinks my MS is changing. And I'm really worried. Can I start a new DMT? Should I start a new DMT? What are my options? As my MS progresses and my doctor is saying to me, I think we should change. Do I dig in my heels and say, no way? Or do I stop taking DMTs altogether? So there's a lot for you to unpack there.
I think it's a very individual, it's a very personalized sort of question. So what I certainly want the viewers to sort of think is that this is a generic answer. So this is an answer which is very much, to that particular patient asking that question. I think most MSologists would agree that there isn't a single disease modifying treatment during the course of, somebody's MS that one would sort of, say that this is a drug and then you're going to be on it for the rest of your MS. So MS change.
I'm on my fifth. I've taken my fifth DMT in 30 years.
Continuous evaluation of MS is so important. So what you cannot do is prescribe disease modifying treatment and see someone in 2 years' time. It needs sort of, constant evaluation, both from the patient. I think education of patients is also extremely important. I'm sure the listeners would sort of agree with that. So it's very important to know your own MS. So the clinician, obviously, we're working in a very sort of time-strapped, service-constrained setting at the moment. So there is only that frequency. So it's very important that you recognize your symptoms with MS and then report them, because it makes a significant difference. As we've already said, the DMT, which is suitable for your stage of MS or your level of activity, is extremely important. So what doesn't work is essentially somebody on a very sort of, low efficacy disease modifying treatment who then has got high MRI activity, and then we carry on with that. So moving across the sort of, 2 years of treatment is really important if you're following the escalation approach.
So be flexible if your doctor is making suggestions.
It's an evolving scene with MS. The second thing to say is that one of the very difficult scenarios which arises in a patient's and also clinician's life is actually that point in time when the artificial boundary then sort of, takes hold and actually says that drugs for relapsing-remitting MS are not suitable for progressive MS anymore. And that's a very difficult point, actually, in coming up with that particular sort of scenario. The thing which I'd say to most patients is that it's quite because of the way in which drugs are licensed, it's quite a flexible situation. So if I saw that, somebody who's progressing moves on to one of the drugs which are licensed for progressive MS, and actually they haven't done very well, there's absolutely no reason why you can't go the other way. So I think the one-way street approach of MS, saying that once you enter secondary progressive MS, none of the treatments for relapsing-remitting MS are suitable for you, I think is not right.
I think the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask essentially, can you flip-flop? It's actually, I was getting on really well on drug A. We've tried drug B. I'm not getting on so well with it, whether it's objective measurements or whether I don't feel great on it. Can I go back to drug A? That ship hasn't sailed, has it?
Absolutely not. I think once you think that, I think if your MSologist essentially feels that at that point in time, again, the boundary to define secondary progression is there is no objective boundary. So it's very much a subjective situation. So if you find that someone hasn't had MRI activity, clinically sort of monitoring people that progress, then you may be suitable for a drug for secondary progressive MS, which is currently licensed. But equally, if there's MRI activity then subsequently down the line, because your previous disease modifying treatments actually kept things really quiet and we haven't quite realized that, there's always an opportunity to switch and go back on to what was suiting you at the present time. So it's an evolving evaluation rather than being a single time point sort of view.
Dr. Arun, that's brilliant. Thank you. I think a lot of people, I would say it's a sad fact, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So if you're having issues, turn up, explain it. A lot of people with the more advanced MS are sometimes feel neglected and overlooked and sidelined. So it may not come to you. You may have to make yourself go to it and put your hand up and say, I'm having issues. I've heard about this. Please, can you help me? Because it's better to have a conversation, I think, with the doctor who explains why you can't do something, versus, but it's all about us. When it's me and my doctor, it's one-to-one. And with the doctor, it's one-to-many. So you've got to remember that and make your own case.
As always, make sure you subscribe to Live Health so you don't miss out on any of the videos in this series.